Hey guys, and welcome to The Broken Sword. Today we are covering the full story of Aragorn, son of Arathorn. This is a topic that we covered in two parts over on the old channel. We had it split into his time before the War of the Ring and after his coronation. In this video, however, we will be covering his story in full. I hope you enjoy.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
Aragorn, which is Sindarin for Revered King, was born in 2931 of the Third Age to Arathorn and Gilrain. With his father Arathorn having been slain by orcs after an arrow pierced his eye, when Aragorn was just 2 years old, he was taken to Rivendell by his mother Gilrain. He was there fostered by the elven lord Elrond, who cared for him as if he was his own son. Elrond decided that Aragorn's identity as Isildur's heir and heir to the throne of Gondor should be kept a secret, as he would be vulnerable and targeted by the enemy. Aragorn was then named Estel, which is Sindarin for hope. His childhood was likely difficult, as everyone around him, with the exception of his mother, was likely hundreds or maybe even thousands of years older than him. He surely often wondered about his father, who no one would tell him about because of the decision to keep his identity secret, even from him. By the time the events of The Hobbit came around, he was 10 or 11 years old and was probably doing what any normal kid that age was doing. He was likely being educated in history and other subjects that a child in Middle-earth would need to know, and he had likely already began his combat and survival training and was sufficient in the skills that he would need later in life. It's highly unlikely that he got to meet Bilbo and Thorin's company as they passed through Rivendell. The entire reason that he was there in the first place was to hide from Sauron. However, the heirs of Isildur had often been hidden in Rivendell in the past, so news that there was a 10-year-old man there after his line was apparently extinct would likely have raised a lot of questions. Now, obviously this part is all pretty much speculation, as it's impossible to know exactly what he was doing around this time, but I'd say it's fair to assume that this would be a fairly accurate guess. So over the next few years, Aragorn accompanied the twin sons of Elrond, Elladan and Elrohir, on their journeys, just like his father had once done. We don't know a great detail about their adventures, but it's likely that these years would have been where he developed his skills in battle. It is said that he grew to be a fair and noble man, and was very mature for his age. Elrond decided to reveal his true name and ancestry after he returned home from a journey with Elladan and Elrohir in the year 2952 of the Third Age, when Aragorn was 21 years old. As a part of this reveal, Elrond delivered to him the heirlooms of his house, the shards of Narsil and the ring of Barahir. It was the day after this revelation that Aragorn was sat in the forest, full of hope, singing a part of the Lay of Luthien. He was singing of the meeting of Beren and Luthien when Arwen, daughter of Elrond, who had just returned from living in Lothlorien, appeared in front of him. He thought that Luthien herself had appeared, and he instantly fell in love with her. The full tale of Aragorn and Arwen is perhaps a story for another day, so if you'd like to see a video about that, let us know in the comments down below. So after this, Aragorn took up his real name, Aragorn, the 16th chieftain of the Dunedain. He took leave of his mother and Elrond in Rivendell and entered into the wild. Aragorn then met with Gandalf the Grey in 2956, and the two became great friends. It was actually at Gandalf's advice that Aragorn became interested in the Shire, and became then known as Strider in this region. Over the next 23 years, Aragorn aided the West in their battles against Sauron and his allies. He served Thengel, king of Rohan, who was actually Theoden's father. He also served Ecthelion, steward of Gondor, who was Denethor's father. Throughout this time, he disguised himself under the name Thorongil, which was Sindarin for Eagle of the Star, a name given to him because of the silver star he wore upon his cloak. After serving under Thengel, he committed his time to Ecthelion, who was in desperate need of able men to defend his lands against the constant attacks from Mordor. Thorongil quickly proved himself as a great leader by both land and sea, and because of this, Ecthelion trusted him and loved him. Many believed that this caused a rivalry between Thorongil and the steward's son Denethor, who probably knew of Thorongil's real identity as heir to the throne, and suspected that him and Gandalf had plans to take over his eventual rule. However, Thorongil only saw himself as a servant of the steward and had no plans to overthrow, interested only in the safekeeping of the free peoples of Middle-earth, just as a true leader should be. Ecthelion had been expecting an attack from Sauron, and Thorongil warned him that the southern fiefs would be left vulnerable to attacks from the Corsairs of Umbar. Ecthelion allowed him to take ships and lead an attack against Umbar. At night he burned many of their ships, and in a fight he killed the captain of the Haven, receiving only a few casualties to his men. Great honour then awaited him back at Minas Tirith. However, he did not return. While in Pelagia, he left a farewell message to Ecthelion saying that fate would not allow him to return anytime soon. He left Gondor to travel into the far east and south to explore the hearts of men, both good and evil, and learning of the plots and devices of the servants of the Dark Lord. His deeds ensured the survival of the West much later into the War of the Ring. Now, I want to go back on myself slightly here to ask you guys a question that I have always wondered. Let me explain. So Theoden was roughly 17 years younger than Aragorn, which would make him about 9 years old when Aragorn, disguised as Thorongil, arrived in Rohan. Now, let us assume that Aragorn spent roughly 10 of the 23 years in Rohan before he left for Gondor. That would put Theoden in his late teens by the time that Aragorn left. Now, by the time that Theoden is freed of Saruman's magic in the Two Towers, did Theoden know that Aragorn was Thorongil, the man from his childhood? Because he certainly did not know that Thorongil was Aragorn, so does he think that they are separate people? Does that even make any sense? If you get what I'm saying, please let me know your thoughts on that whole situation in the comments down below. I don't know why, but I find things like that extremely fascinating. Anyway, moving on. In the year 2980, Aragorn, on his journey back to Rivendell, entered Lothlorien. Here he met again with Arwen. For one season they wandered together, and Arwen pledged her hand to him in marriage. Elrond gave Aragorn his permission to marry his daughter, on one condition. He had to first become the king of both Gondor and Arnor, for only a king would be worthy of Arwen's hand. This seemingly harsh condition was actually very similar to another tale in Middle-earth's history, when King Thingol requested that Beren obtain a Silmaril from Morgoth before he was able to marry his daughter Luthien. Now, unfortunately, very little is known about Aragorn's exploits over the next 20 years, until the year 3001, when he began to assist Gandalf in his search for news on the creature Gollum. Gandalf had started to suspect that the ring Bilbo Baggins found near Gollum's lake may in fact be the One Ring. In 3007, he returned to Eriador to visit his dying mother for the last time. She sadly passed away before the spring of that year. Aragorn searched intermittently then over the next few years for Gollum, and he finally caught up with him in the Dead Marshes on the 1st of February in the year 3017. He then travelled with the captured Gollum through the northern Emyn Muil to prevent being found by Sauron's spies. He travelled further north along the edges of Fangorn Forest and then through Lothlorien. It was here that the elves then sent a message to Gandalf to inform him of the situation. He then travelled alongside the Anduin to the north until he arrived at the Carrock. Then, with the help of the Beornins, he crossed the river and entered Mirkwood. Here he gave custody of Gollum to the elven king Thranduil to be held captive. Then he returned west and met with Gandalf at Sarn Ford and learned of Frodo's plans to leave Bag End with the One Ring. Aragorn then returned to his own lands, and shortly after was informed by the elves that Black Riders had been spotted and Gandalf was suspected missing, as nobody had received messages from him. Aragorn and his rangers kept a watch over the Shire and its surrounding lands, looking for any sight of Frodo, but no news came of him leaving Buckland. Soon after, while staying in Bree, Aragorn, known here as Strider, crossed paths with 4 young hobbits at the Prancing Pony Inn. And this is of course where Aragorn's story picks up in The Lord of the Rings. We know that he went on to help both Rohan and Gondor in the wars against Sauron. So I won't go into too much detail here, as I'm pretty sure the majority of you are fully aware of that part of his life in quite a lot of detail. So let's skip ahead to his coronation. After Sauron's eventual defeat, Aragorn became crowned as King Elessar, a name that was given to him by Galadriel. He was the 25th king of Gondor and the 26th king of Arnor, but the first king of the reunited kingdom. Though it was actually a few years before he managed to establish full authority in Arnor, a kingdom which had long since fallen. Now the rest of Aragorn's timeline does lack a lot of detail, so I'm just going to talk about what I know from the appendices and the history of Middle-earth books and expand upon them the best I can. We know that after his coronation, Aragorn made Faramir one of Gondor's highest ranking nobles and one of the king's main commanders. He was also appointed the Prince of Ithilien and the Steward of Gondor. Aragorn trusted Faramir so much that whenever he left the city, he left rule of Gondor to him. It's also likely that Aragorn received a lot of help from Faramir when he needed to deal with any remaining threats. One of the biggest threats to the free peoples of Middle-earth after the War of the Ring did not come from orcs, but from Easterlings, a race of men that came from the lands of Rhûn near Mordor. Aragorn led a number of campaigns to eliminate and defeat them. He eventually did conquer them and added some of their lands to the reunited kingdom. Hereafter, the Easterlings ceased to be a threat, and very little is known about their lives after this. I'm not entirely sure when exactly in the timeline this happened, whether it was at the very tail end of the Third Age or the start of the Fourth Age. Again, if anybody knows this and can provide a reference to where it is stated, please let me know in the comments down below. Maybe we could write a fanfiction on this period one day. That would be cool. We also know that Elisar officially married Arwen, daughter of Elrond, brother of Elros, the first king of Númenor, which actually restores the high lineage of the royal house. However, the long lifespan of Númenorians was not restored and continued to wane until it became that of other men. Elrond finally gave Aragorn the scepter of Annúminas, an heirloom that he had previously told Aragorn that he must first earn. Then the king welcomed his guests, and they alighted, and Elrond surrendered the scepter and laid the hand of his daughter in the hand of the king. And together they went up into the high city, and all the stars flowered in the sky. And Aragorn the king Elisar wedded Arwen and Dumiel in the city of the kings upon the day of midsummer, and the tale of their long awaiting and labours was come to fulfilment. Just after the wedding, Éomer came to Minas Tirith, and with Aragorn returned to Edoras to attend the funeral of King Theoden. Not long after this, the Fourth Age began. For a while, King Elisar rode north and dwelled near Lake Evendim. He goes to Brandywine Bridge and greets his friends there. He gifts the Star of the Dunedain to Sam, whose daughter Elenor is made a maid of honour to Queen Arwen. Sam, Rosie and their daughter Elenor then moved to Gondor for a year. It turns out that the hobbits having such a close relationship with the king had its benefits for the Shire in general. Aragorn did his absolute best to ensure that the Shire remained to live peacefully and happily. It became a territory under protection of Arnor, but still remained an independent land, and the entry of any fully grown men was forbidden. He stays for a while by Lake Evendim, then everyone in the Shire is glad, but he does not enter this land and binds himself by the law that he has made, that none of the big people shall pass its borders. But he rides often with many fair people to the Great Bridge, and there he welcomes his friends and any other people who wish to see him, and some ride away with him and stay in his house as long as they have a mind. I absolutely love this passage because it truly shows just how much Aragorn's hobbit friends really mean to him, and he's not just the king of Gondor and Arnor, but of all of the free people of Middle-earth. Now, not much is known of his dealings until the 1st of March in the year 120 of the Fourth Age, where Aragorn, son of Arathorn, King Elisar of the reunited kingdom of Arnor and Gondor, chieftain of the Dunedain, dies on his birthday. He lived for 210 years and ruled for 122 years. It is said that King Elisar and Queen Arwen reigned long and in great blessedness, but at the last the weariness came upon the king, and then, while still in vigour of mind and body, he laid himself down after the manner of the ancient kings of Númenor. Then going to the house of the kings in the silent street, Aragorn laid him down on the long bed that had been prepared for him. There he said farewell to Eldarion, and gave into his hands the winged crown of Gondor and the scepter of Arnor. If you aren't aware, of course, Eldarion is the son of Arwen and Aragorn. It's also said that the beds of Merry and Pippin were set beside the bed of the great king, and after the passing of the king, Legolas built a grey ship in Ithilien to sail west, taking with him Gimli. And when that ship passed, an end had come in Middle-earth for the Fellowship of the Ring. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that last part makes me very sad, but in a happy way. Now, before you guys go, I would like to take a second to thank each and every one of you that have continued to support us through the transition from History of the Ages to the Broken Sword. It's not been an easy process, but we really appreciate your support. We have tried very hard to up the quality of our content, and we hope that you guys have noticed. All of you that have also continued to support our short film through Patreon are all unbelievable. Thank you so much, it means the world to us. That's it from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video on Aragorn, son of Arathorn. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.